Okay, so just a few things just before we start. Actually, the first is in terms of the format. I've divided the sugya as we began with a statement of Rav Chisda and base Omud base just after the Mishnah. Then we have Rabba's explanation of Rav Chisda, which takes us through to the analysis of Rabba's statement, takes us through to the fifth line on Mem Gimel Omud Aleph. And then we have Rav Yosef's analysis of Rav Chisda, which takes us through till about a chunk of the daf, another sort of half of the Omud rather. So that's how I'm splitting the sugyas. Rabba's analysis of Rav Chisda and then Rav Yosef's analysis of Rav Chisda. That's number one. Number two, I'm aware the last year there were internet problems, but the uploaded version has the audio fixed up. So if anyone missed it online, I guess I should be saying this to those who are online. The share, the audio recording is a good recording. The next thing also is that unfortunately, fortunately because of good reasons, because of simchas, but I am not going to be able to give a share this Tuesday because of a chasna, and then not next Sunday, and then again not next Tuesday. There's a backlog of simchas Baruch Hashem post COVID. So I will send Mara Makomas, but there will not be a share. So today I will try and finish off the Rabba's analysis of Rav Chisda. Rav Yosef's analysis of Rav Chisda brings in the sugya Mvatel Kimei Chonoi. Mvatel Kimei Chonoi is a massive sugya, and I will dump tons and tons of Maram Komas on everyone for that, and then I'll try and give a longer share when I'm back. I'm just sort of trying to tidy it up, but there's like an infinite amount to say on Mvatel Kimei Chonoi. It's a big sugya. Sorry, that will probably be the last week. Yeah. Okay. First, I'll do what I can of that. We'll try and do Mvatel Kimei Chonoi. The third thing to say is that this Tuesday there is a very chashuv Talmid Chacham, Rav Zimmerman, his name is, from Shalavim Yeshiva, formerly of Shalavim Yeshiva, now I think working for Mizrahi, who will be in town, and he asked me if he can give a share in the shul, like a high-level share. Now it's Tuesday evening, I'm away this Tuesday, so I said, are you happy to give something on Muktza? Like I didn't say which sukkah, I said just on the concepts of Muktza. So he agreed to do that. So I'm still going to work out exact timings, but this Tuesday, even though I will not be here, you'll have a more than adequate replacement. So you'll hear one-off treat, I hope, from a very chashuv Talmid Chacham on the sort of Masogim and the Lomdus of Muktza. I've deliberately not done that in the series because, as I said, Muktza is a bit overwhelming. So we're sort of learning through, line by line and trying to build up the Masogim organically, bottom up rather than top down. But I think it's no bad thing to hear a sort of top down share on Muktza anyway and get some of the
on Zoom as well.
So that will be on Zoom as well. Yeah, that will be on Zoom also. And I'll work out. I'll talk with Adam off group about how to run that. Sorry. Yeah, Adam is saying correctly. It's nice if as many people as possible can come live, just so that he A, gets the coverage he deserves, and B, I don't know how comfortable he is giving Shiur on Zoom. I guess he is now post-COVID, but certainly if you've got no one in the room and you're just speaking to, it's a bit daunting. So his English is good. Yeah, his English is fine. Yeah. Okay. One final thing before so that we can actually get down to learning, which is that this shir is the Ilo Nishmas Rabbi Leib ben Yehuda Halevi, who is it's his 12th yahrzeit, the father of Melanie Calvert, Taryn Shonin, Gina Brodkin, who is our own. Is Edgar online, yeah, and Edgar's late father-in-law and husband of those Shonin, and Mitzvah Hashem, this shir should be a fitting Eloi Neshama for him. Okay, so I wanted to try and do a few things today, Mitzvah Hashem. One is a quick chazara, because I got a little bit of feedback that people just would be grateful if we could just run through again the different explanations of Rabba's explanation of Rav Chisda, who says that Hatzalah and the Chiluk the Gemara makes more accurately, because in Hatzalah Matsuya Hitziru and Hatzalah She'enu Matsuya Lo Hitziru. What is this Chiluk of Hatzalah Matsuya and Hatzalah She'enu Matsuya? So Rashi says that the real issue going on over here is Mevatel is Tiltul Kli L'Tzorech Dava She'enu Nittel. That's really what's going on over here. The reason it's a bit confusing, if we're already starting looking at Rav Yosef, is because Rav Yosef tells us what the problem is, what the issue is. He says the issue is Mevatel Kli Mehechonoi. Rabbah never says that. Rabbah never says what the problem is. Rabbah just says what the chiluk is between Hatzalah Matsuya and Hatzalah She'enu Matsuya. That's also the problem. Maybe I should have contextualized that better last time. So the source of the problem is Rabbah doesn't tell us what is the issue over here, what's going on over here. You start with Yosef, we understand Mevatel Kiyum Echano, we don't understand it. He tells us clearly what's going on. The issue is Mevatel Kiyum Echano is the problem. And now we have to work out what are the parameters of Mevatel Kiyum Echano. Rabbah never quite does that as clearly. Rabbah doesn't say that exactly what the issue is. He just says the distinction is Hatzalah Matsuya and Hatzalah She'einu Matsuya. So Rashi adds into that. Rashi says the real issue is not to be metaltel kli l'tzorech davar she'einu nitol, and Hatzalah Matsuya She'einu Matsuya is a chiluk as to when they removed that issa or waived that issa because of the needs of Hatzalah Matsuya. That's how Rashi learns the sugya. The real issa is metaltel kli l'tzorech davar she'einu nitol. Now we explained that one explanation, we'll look at this in more detail when we learn Mevatel Kiyum Echano, but the simple or a beautiful explanation of tiltul kli l'tzorech davar she'einu nitol is that every keli, or almost every keli, is muktza with respect to that tishtamshus. As we said, muktza often isn't a black-white, on-off, all or nothing concept. Isn't that this object is muktza, is that every object is muktza with respect to certain tashmishim, to certain uses. So even an object we think of as muktza, like a pen or a hammer, is only muktza with respect to its normal uses, but you can move them for l'tzorech gufa. If I wish to use the hammer to crack open a coconut or as a doorstopper, I can, because it's a keli, and if it's not muksa, one way of looking at it is to say it's not muksa with respect to that. With respect to that, it can be used for that ishtamshus. So one way of looking at this concept that you can't move a kli l'tzorech davar she'einu nitol is that all kelim are muksa with respect to a non-nitl need. The kli isn't omeid, shouldn't be used, isn't set aside before Shabbos for the use of protecting something which is non-muksa, which is muksa, because by definition, an object which is muksa is not mukhan, and therefore even mukhan objects are not mukhan with respect to non-mukhan uses. That's one way of understanding this concept. So this is Rashi's explanation of the sugya. It's not clear. Either two ways of understanding it. Either the heter is simply waving. Chazal didn't want to make, for some reason or other, this is a weaker issa. They didn't want to make the issa so affect you in the case of Hatzalah Matsuya. So they said, even though you shouldn't move something, the Torah davar she'einu nitol, since fundamentally the object you're moving is not mukta, the bowl that you're putting onto the egg or over the egg or whatever it is not mukta. Therefore, it's a weaker issa, and therefore we waive it where there's a significant need. That's one way of understanding the Gemara. The alternative way of understanding the Gemara is that a keli is muchan for Hatzalah Matsuya. Even though the object I'm rescuing is mukta, but the rescue of that object is Hatzalah Matsuya, and therefore maybe a kli is muchan for Hatzalah Matsuya. That's a second way of understanding the Gemara. I'm not entirely sure, and this gets to the confusion that someone pointed out last time. I'm not entirely sure what Hatzalah Matsuya and Einu Matsuya means and exactly how it works. So I am being one could accuse me of being waffling a little bit here. I don't exactly know what this svara is over here, because I've struggled to understand exactly what the distinction of the Gemara is. But I can't claim this is like a crystal clear svara, but intuitively it seems these are two ways of understanding the Gemara.
Just pick up on
something
specific. You said wait for a significant need.
Yes.
And the need is the same whether it's two or not two, but it's happening.
Sorry, for regular needs. Apologies. Apologies. Sorry. Yes. This is part of what I'm confused about here, because it's happened already. That was part of what I meant when I said I'm a little unclear about how to formulate these sorrows, because they're nice sorrows in advance of them happening, but it's happened already. So this would seem to suggest that it's the expectation of it happening that matters, in which case it would seem to suggest that the other svara is the better svara, that is not muksa with respect to an expected need, because it's matsuya, and therefore this is called muchan. It's a standard thing to use utensils to protect you from expected needs. So that's part of my blurred thinking around all of this. Yes.
You pointed out when common made gazeras, they often made the gazeras and extended it to regular mixes. And if it was an irregular mix, they didn't say.
Yes.
And what you said now works really well according to Rashi, because it's things are muktza with respect to irregular needs, and that works.
Yes.
But when we get onto Tosfos, for example, it's about terifah or whatever, then it is a bit harder to understand why
yes.
Not the way they usually.
Yes.
There are regular cases.
Yeah. The only tweak I would say on that is that regular and irregular cases here, it doesn't fit the normal definition of when they made the gazera or not, because the sum totality of needing to use things to rescue other things is a regular need. So therefore, the point is they didn't make gazeras for rare situations, but it's not rare to need to protect things, and therefore, as a whole, it counts as a regular need. Nonetheless, it's difficult to understand exactly what the logic of why Muktza should be weighed. You could have had other criteria to weigh things: a valuable object versus a cheap object. Particularly, as you said, since it's already happened, so now it's happened, you need it. So in Tosfos, it is difficult to understand the chiluk between Muktza and Ein Muktza. Yeah.
Just one other thing, talking about valuable and cheap. So we have the situation where a person's house is burning down and he's not allowed to save a thing other than 3 needles. So you're extending this case to not saving, you can't save anything. And you're now saying, well, you can save an egg because it happens slightly more frequently.
Correct. I don't know what to say. And all of this is what I meant when I said I'm confused about the Gemara. We don't normally find that Muktza and Ein Muktza. So for those online, Eddie, I was just asking, if Muktza, the logic of Muktza and Ein Muktza is waiving the gezerah in difficult situations, and I mentioned already, as I said, that we would expect the criteria to normally be like Hefsed and Rubber. These are the normal categories we use, or something like that. One scenario is your house is burning down. I mean, it's the most terrible nisayon a human can face. A house is burning down. Because we've now learned that it's only drabanan that you're not allowed to rescue your property, and you're seeing your whole life being destroyed. Now, I guess Baruch Hashem, in a way, we don't face that nisayon because we assume every situation, certainly in cities, is b'koch nefesh. If you have a building out in the middle of nowhere that's not connected to the central gas supply, and everyone in it has been rescued, maybe you would face this shaila. But in modern day cities, obviously you have to call the fire brigade straight away and so on because it's a b'koch nefesh scenario. But yeah, and you're losing your whole house, and yet for that they didn't waive the gezerah of Tosfos, or more actually the Ramban, who says Hatzalah, because we worry that you'll be bottled al mamono, and yet for the egg they did. Because I don't know what to say. Very, very strange. I'll just mention, sorry, though, just to get back to our working our way consistently through the Mahalchim. Rashi was faced with a problem that Rabbah doesn't say the reason for the Issa. Rav Yosef says, Rabbah doesn't say it. Says Rashi, the reason for this is because the kli is not nittul, the of Hashem in nittul, and when Rabbah makes this distinction between Hatzalah, Muktza, and Ein Muktza, that's simply when do we waive or when do we make an exception to the Issa. The Run suggests that Rabbah it quotes Rashi, or if we dare say it, misquotes Rashi, because in Rashi, L'fanenu, we don't see it, as saying that Rabbah's not going into the issue of this at all. He could also have held Mevatel Kli Me'echano, and last week we discussed the problems with that view, why Mevatel Kli Me'echano doesn't seem to work, and why we understand why Rashi says it as we have it only because Ein Kli Nittel Elo Tzorech Davar Nittel. But in brief, according to Rashi, the translation of Muktza and Ein Muktza is not the reason for the Issa. Rabbah was not symmetrical to Rav Yosef. He wasn't telling us the problem. He was telling us the solution or the distinction to when the Issa applies. That was Rashi. Tosfos says the issue is the Hatzalah itself, Teicha, a new Issa. The Ramban and the Ram say the issue is, again, Hatzalah itself, because of a well-known gezerah of Odom Bol al Mamono, situations of rescue. We're worried that people will become overly caught up in the rescue and forget Hilchos Shabbos. And finally, we said the Ritva, which I printed in the source sheets in Men Gimel and Beis. It's off subject, but I just thought it's a really, really important Maramachim for us to know. And the Ritva says that the real issue is that you're being metaltal kli. Even kelim can't be moved for, or at least some kelim can't be moved for no tzorech at all. Almost every keli or many kelim are Muktza for non-needs, for non-uses. Because again, if Muktza means that it isn't Muchan, and that doesn't mean the object's not Muchan, we have to think of the object not Muchan in terms of certain Hishtamshiyot, certain uses, then many kelim are not Muchan for non-use, because non-use by definition is a non-use of something it's not Muchan for. So the Rashba learns that Hatzalah is a non-use. It's a rescue, but it's not a use in and of in itself, and therefore you can't. Every kedi, or almost every kedi, is Muktza with respect to that. I want to mention over here that Muktza is one of the primary places, sugyas, that force us to think about what we mean by the word kedi or utensil. The concept of kedim comes up in several different topics in Torah. So, for example, when you learn taharos, one of the big topics of taharos is what is a kedi and what isn't a kedi, an utensil, because only a kli can be makabel tumah and so on and so forth. Muktza is not related to that. The concept of kedi in different sugyas differs, but Muktza makes us think about what we mean by utensil. And it, more fundamentally than that, it makes us think about what our relationship to objects as human beings are, because you have objects which are things in their own rights. You have a stone which was merrily going through existence, as stones do, without thinking too much about anything. We humans come along and we enslave the stone. We see the stone as being there for our world, our use. So when you say something is a keli, you're putting a human relationship, imposing a human relationship onto an object which doesn't naturally carry that relationship. And there's a tension between these two ways of looking at this object. The profound sort of identity or physicality of the object is one which is removed from human use. And on that is the keli, which is imposed as a concept on it by us. And every definition of something as a keli is a rewriting of the object into a new definition based upon the regularity of our use. Now, and again, we'll see how this plays out in Hilchos Muktza. A standard stone lying in the street is Muktza because it isn't a keli, it's not made for human use. It hasn't been redefined. Now, it's true that it may happen on Shabbos. I wish to engage in this act of redefinition and use it for something, or even without redefinition, I just want to use it one off on something, but I can't just do that. And in Hilchos Muktza, we're going to learn, what do I need to do if I want to make a stone not to be Muktza and be something that I want to use for on Shabbos? If I want to collect a stone before Shabbos and put it in my room so that I can use it as a door stopper, what action do I need to engage in order to make it into a keli? It's just a regular stone, which I might discard. So making something a keli is redefining it. When there's two stages in that redefinition, one is a statement of fact, which is objects have hishtamshius, they have uses. The chiddush of a keli is that the collation of these uses redefines what the object is. I've used this example before, but I'll use it again. You can write with a bottle of ketchup or a lipstick, but it doesn't redefine the bottle of ketchup or lipstick into a pen. Because it happens to have, you can write with it, but it doesn't become a writing implement. It doesn't become an object of writing because it's not enough of a normal way to do things. So a pen is something where the writing of it has redefined what the object is. And every time we talk about a keli, we mean that the sum total of the shtamshus has become redefined. Once something becomes a keli, the chiddush of Hilchos Muktza is that it now becomes subservient to my uses, and therefore even for non-prepared uses, to some degree or other, it's always omed for those uses. So this hammer, which is a Muktza keli because it's omed for melachot, for beating nails into walls, nonetheless, there's a keli all said and done. It's an implement. It's enslaved by me. It's omed for human use. And therefore, since it's omed for human use, there always lingers around it some degree of preparedness in that it is muchan if I decide to use it for another type of human use, which is mutter for Shabbos, like cracking open coconuts. So a keli, what we're learning over here is thinking about what kelim are, to what degree they're meshubbat for our use, to what degree they are automatically omed for shtamshus. And the Rashba is arguing that many kelim are not automatically omed for non-use. And therefore, according to this suggestion of the Rashba, you wouldn't be allowed to just casually play with a utensil on Shabbos, even though it's what we would call a non-muktzah utensil, because they're always muktzah for non-uses. So what we have here is a spectrum. We have a hammer, which we all know you can't play with, because muktzah. A hammer is muktzah, a pen is muktzah on Shabbos, of course. But even the pen or the hammer is not muktzah if I need to use it for sorech, if I need to use it for a mutzah use. Then you have a sefer, or the like, which according to the Rashba, we'd say it's not muktzah, so I can use for anything. So the Rashba, yes, it's muchan for any use, it's not muchan for non-use, and therefore I can't just fiddle with it, I can't just play with it on Shabbos casually, because it's muktzah for non-use. And then you have kelim, maybe like cutlery, which are so muchan for all use, they're so used widely and constantly, that maybe even the Rashba would agree they're muchan even for non-uses, because they're so enslaved to us. They're such kelim which are omed for any use. So you have a spectrum of what we think of as muktzah and non-muktzah that really means to what degree is it omed for hishtamshus. So this is a summary of the first part of what we said last time. Let's just move on now, and I just really want to make a series of ha'oros on the Gemara. Has anyone yet learned Rav Yosef? Have we seen Rav Yosef? Has anyone yet read through Rav Yosef? Okay, so I'm going to make these ha'oros, but they may not be fully clear to everyone until you learn Rav Yosef. I'm doing them a little bit in preparation for, given I'm going to be away also. The Gemara says that Abaya, asks the question. Abaya says, Esa Abaya, Hatzalash Eidim Matsuya Lo Yitiru, Vatanan Nishvuri Chavis Shaltevel Broish Gagoi, Mevi Kedi Umaniach Tachtel. If a chavis of tevel breaks, you can put a keli underneath it. In other words, a counter proof against Rabba's explanation of a chista, because you see you can put a keli to collect this tevel. Now, 2 points over here. The first point is we already saw in Tosfos. There were 2 gesois around in this Gemara, whether this is any chavis or chavis shel tevel, and it would depend how you learned Rabba as to which geso you would choose. So if Rabba held that the problem is any hatzalah because it's tircha, or Rabba held any hatzalah because of Odom Bohol al Mamonai, or maybe like the Rashba, the hatzalah isn't a use at all. In those 3 scenarios, you could say any chavis that breaks. There's nothing to do with it being a chavis shel tevel. Just the act of rescue is a problem on Shabbos. However, according to Rashi, that the problem is using a keli for Muktza, Rashi would have to be goreis chavis shel tevel. So that gets caught up in that note. Now, the Gemara on here, I get to the bit that I understand people haven't yet seen, but I'll just say this outside. The Gemara on Omud Beis goes through the opinion of Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says the mechanism of the Mishnah is mevatel kimei chanu, and then it asks a series of parallel questions on Rav Yosef to those which it has already asked on Rabbah. And as it goes through very, very similar sources. When you get up to learning the Gemara, and I'll be away for this, but when you get up to learning the Gemara, what you want to do is you want to cross-reference each question that it asks on Rabbah, look at whether that question is equally relevant to Rav Yosef, which questions it does ask and doesn't ask, and how the Gemara answers each of the questions. In other words, Rabbah set a theory as to an explanation as to what Rav Chisda's distinction was and what the Isra over here is. His theory was either according to Rashi, Tilka Kleidid Soros Davashe Little, all this new halacha of Hatzalah. Rav Yosef said a different theory, Mevatel Kimei Chana. At least he told us what his theory was, so we know it's Mevatel Kimei Chana. The Gemara then asks a series of questions on it, and to a degree there's a parallel between the series of questions because there's a symmetry in the analysis of the 2 views, but it's not identical. Neither the questions nor the answers. We'll have to line them up in parallel. In Rav Yosef, the Gemara says that you know what the answer is why tevel, you can put a keli under the tevel, because even though the tevel is currently Muktza, because it's untithed, nonetheless, if you tithed it, it would cease to be Muktza. And therefore, this isn't called mevatel kli mei heichonoi. Again, it's currently Muktza, but you could make it unmukta by tithing it, and therefore it's not mevatel kli mei heichonoi. The Gemara doesn't answer that over here.
Can you do that on Shabbat?
You're not allowed to tithe on Shabbos, that's true, but if you did tithe on Shabbos, it would cease to be Muktza.
Right.
This is what the Gemara says. Very interesting answer to the Gemara. The Gemara answers that later in Mevatel Kimei Chana. It doesn't answer that here in Rabbah.
He's saving it for himself. Then it would still be looked at, right? Because person has ever ordered up on the Masechet, he couldn't use that for after Shabbat.
It's true, but it wouldn't be Muktza for other people, and therefore shouldn't seem to be Muktza. That's the Gemara's argument later. So I appreciate it. This isn't things that people have yet spoken about, but I'll just say the answers so that when you learn the Gemara, you can appreciate this. The reason I wanted to mention this is because it forces us to think about the difference between Kli Nittel, the Torah Tavashein Nittel, and Mevatel Kimei Chana. Mevatel Kimei Chana is that I am making the object that I'm using to protect this object, Muktza itself. I shouldn't make things Muktza on Shabbos. On that, the Gemara says, it's true I'm making this bowl Muktza, but were I to tithe the tevel, it would cease to be Muktza, and then the bowl would also cease to be Muktza. So you can't claim this is a permanent Muktzaization of this bowl that I'm putting under the tevel. Over here, the point isn't whether it's permanent or not. The point is that currently the tevel is Muktza, and therefore I'm moving a keli for something which is currently Muktza. So again, I appreciate that you haven't yet seen the Gemara. All I'm saying, therefore, for now, is that one of the crucial distinctions between Rabbah's reason and Rav Yosef's reason is that Rabbah is saying I'm moving it for something that's currently Muktza. Rav Yosef is saying I'm moving it for something which will remain Muktza, and therefore I'm making the bowl Muktza. They're not symmetrical reasons, and that's something that that we'll focus on later. A second lack of symmetry between the 2 Gemaras is with respect to nitzotzos. So in our Gemara, it says that sparks are shchichi, and therefore this is a Hatzalah Matsuya. In Rav Yosef, the Gemara says that sparks don't have mamoshus. What happens to a spark after it lands? It becomes a little speck of microscopic dust. So it's not something to which the concept of Muktza makes sense. There is no Muktza object over here. And therefore the Gemara on Amud Beis answers, there's no Mevatel Kli Me'echana in catching sparks, because there's nothing there that's Muktza. Again, an example of the lack of symmetry between the two sugyas. In our Gemara, we're talking about an abstract idea. I'm moving a keli l'tzorech davar she'eino nittel. The sparks are, to the extent of their short-lived lives, Muktza. In protecting something from the spark, I'm moving it for something which is davar she'eino nittel. The Gemara on base is interested in Mevatel Kli Me'echana. There is no object that you're catching. When the sparks evaporate, there's just a little dust, there's a fleck of dust left there. There's nothing to capture, and therefore the concept of Mevatel Kli Me'echana doesn't make sense. So again, I'm mentioning all of this because when you get onto Amud Beis and you start learning Mevatel Kli Me'echana is a very different. Don't become confused between the two concepts. Mevatel Kli Me'echana is looking at the bowl in which I'm placing the Muktza, and it's asking, what am I doing to this bowl? In our sugya, it's asking, what am I doing to this bowl? Not what's the result in the bowl that the bowl becomes Muktza, but what is my action? Our sugya is about actions and intent. It's about, am I moving the bowl for the sake of something which is Muktza? That's how Rashi learns it, moving davar nittel, so davar she'eino nittel. In Amud Beis, it's talking about what effect happens to the object once I've done it, and has it in turn become Muktza. So what are the nafkaminas between the two? If there's no object Muktza because the spark is just the dust, if the object I'm moving it for can become unmuktad, if it's on top rather than underneath, so I'm moving it for the sake of something that doesn't become a bosses, it doesn't become Muktza itself. These are the differences between the two sugyas. So I'll stop here for I'll stop here for now, given that we've sort of reached the end of our time. The next sugya is tough because there's a lot of work to do in it. It's not difficult. It's easy to read through the Gemara, cross-reference the two sugyas and see the differences between the two concepts. And when I'm back, I will send further sources. But our topic now going forward is going to be, what does Mevatel Kli Me'echana mean? And we'll work that out by, as I've just done, comparing it to the previous answer to the Gemara, and also by trying to look at some of the sources as to what Mevatel Kli Me'echana means. And a good sugya.
Could I ask a question on the last Rashi on Membet Amud Bet?
Yes.
The tzitzot. So this is we had a problem with this, but anyway, because it seems to be they're arguing about the Masechet, right? Are these things rare or not rare? It goes on
even though sparks cannot be moved and they're not shchiach. Yeah.
So I had a slightly creative reading of that, which might be the second point you said, that they become the microscopic dust. They're not metal slave loshchichi. You can't even find them. No, I don't
think that's what Rashi means. I hear your point, but I think that's what Rashi means. I think it just means the regular meaning of shchiach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask something, Rabbi?
Yes.
Just now, when you're explaining, you're talking within Rashi that he's talking about moving something the tzarech davar nittel or not. But according to the other Rishonim, whether it's tircha or whether it's hatzola, could it be within this section of the Gemara, within Rabba's understanding, they just don't hold of this principle of moving something l'tzarech davar nittel or not? They don't care. At this point in the Gemara, we don't know that's prohibited.
You're correct. According to those Rishonim, tzarech davar nittel is completely irrelevant. The point is, it's an act of hatzola.
It's just hatzola. It doesn't. We're not talking about Muktza. We're not talking about anything. It's
100% right.
Hatzola.
Everything I'm saying about comparing the two sugyas is in Rashi, who learns they're both Muktza type sugyas. According to and the Rashi is also somewhat of a Muktza type sugya. According to the other Rishonim, it's not a Muktza sugya at all. It's nothing to do with Muktza. It's a sugya of hatzola and Teicha on Shabbos or Odom Bahul al Mamono.
Yeah. Okay. Because the Ran spells out that you could move this even for something that is l'tzarech davar. That's not nittel. Exactly right, the other Rishonim don't spell that out, but the Ran does. But
yeah, it's the same with all the Rishonim. If you argue on Rashi, then it's nothing to do with Muktza. Yeah. Okay. I wish everyone well. Good day. Yeah.